QuaranJazz. Listen while you're home. Welcome to the 4th episode of QuaranJazz, your weekly update on what jazz musicians from all around the world are doing during this social isolation time. If you're a jazz musician and you'd like to take part in this project, just visit my website, geisafernandez.com, and drop me a line. And you can also find me in this Facebook group I manage, the Touring Jazz Musician. In this group, we talk about jazz festivals that accept submissions directly from artists. So if you're a jazz musician that would like to know more about the jazz festival circuit, find me out, the Touring Jazz Musician, on Facebook. Today, my guest is Irene Serra, jazz vocalist, composer, teacher, a lot of cool stuff that she'll tell you herself. Hi, Irene.
Hello, my name is Irene Serra. I'm a vocalist, composer, and a jazz educator, I guess. I teach jazz voice at 2 universities. I am Italian originally. I'm half Sicilian, half Sardinian, but I grew up in Copenhagen, Denmark, and now I'm based in the UK. I suppose I'm predominantly a jazz vocalist. I sing Brazilian music as well, and sort of blues and improvised music, and I'm also the band leader of ISQ, which is spelled ISQ, which is my quartet of original music. Our formation is quite classic. We're sort of the classic quartet with piano, double bass, drums, and voice. It's myself on vocals, then there's Richard Sadler on the double bass, then Nadia Sharif on piano, and Chris Nichols on drums.
And how would you describe the sound of ISQ?
How would we describe our music? Well, I suppose we describe it sort of as art pop, post-jazz. I'd say it's sort of a mix of genres. We've been called a melting pot, sort of acoustic and electronic, especially now with the 3rd album. We're definitely exploring much more the electronic soundscape. So I'm playing both the synth, and I'm also using a vocal effects unit. And Richard, the double bass player, is using bass pedals, and Chris is using an electronic drum pad, and Nadia's also playing the synth. So with this last album, we've definitely explored more that sound.
And how did you come to this lineup? Did you know each other already?
We've all known each other for a while. We had all played together in different groups before we decided to put together ISQ. I think we released our first album in 2012, so I remember our first rehearsal maybe being in 2010, where I sort of tentatively brought some compositions and the bass player as well, and we kind of tried playing them through. I was at music college then, I think my last year at music college, and I knew that I wanted to, play original music, or at least to also play original music. And so then I reached out to the bass player and Richard, and he also wanted to play original music. He was playing in the Neil Cowley Trio then. He was one of the founding members of the Neil Cowley Trio. And we were both very influenced by EST, the Esperance Vincent Trio, and the Bad Plus. So that was definitely the sort of soundscape that we wanted to explore. So yeah, we kind of got together in 2010 and had a few rehearsals, and then we decided to sort of, do it seriously and record an album, which we did in 2012. That's when we released our first album. It was called just ISQ. That was our debut album, and it went down really well. We got, quite a few nice reviews, and we did, some lovely gigs. And then we released the second album called 2TOO, inventively named by the double bass player, in 2015. And now we just released our third album called Requiem for the Faithful. We released that in September 2019, and we released in September, and then we sort of started a UK tour, which we had still a few more dates for in the book, but obviously with the situation all around the world now of coronavirus, those last few gigs have been cancelled.
And Irene, now I would like to know more about your latest album. It is a very personal, particularly personal project, right?
Requiem for the Faithful was quite a personal album for me. I mean, I suppose they all are. But this one in particular, as, I really felt it took us longer to write this album than it had the other two albums. There was a space of 4 years between the second and the third, and a lot happened in my life, both personally. My mother passed away, and both just at a worldwide level, politically, and I'm based in the UK, so Brexit was happening, and I guess just a lot of uncertainty and new beginnings, whether I wanted them or not. And so Requiem for the Faithful was a little snippet of those emotions, and I titled it Requiem for the Faithful as my mother was quite religious, especially more so in her later years, and usually it's Requiem for the Faithfully Departed, which obviously is, what she was, but I thought there came a point that I was feeling quite overwhelmed, and I thought, well, actually, I think it's the people that are still alive that need these prayers with what was going on, ecologically and politically, and I guess it was just my way of trying to deal with grief and so much uncertainty that surrounded me then.
Well, thank you very much for sharing this very personal story with us. Really, thank you. And now let's go back to where you live. You said you are based in the UK, right?
I am based in the UK, in London, which is my favorite city in the world, which is a good thing, really, because I've lived here for quite some time now. I think it's coming up to 20 years, so I've lived here a while. I am based in quite a few projects. I have my own sort of more traditional jazz standard band called the Irene Serra Quartet, where we play, sort of jazz standards and Brazilian music and blues. And I'm a massive fan of vocalese, so I do a lot of vocalese, and I write lyrics to jazz instrumentals. So, sometimes I premiere some of those. Then I also play in a gypsy jazz band called La Bouche Manouche, which I had never really thought about, singing gypsy jazz. And then one of my friends who sang in this band moved to France, and she recommended me to the band leader. And so he called me up, and I started singing with them, and really loved it. It was a very, different type of jazz, and I love the fact that people, could dance to it. So it was very much fun, and then we kind of got together and released a few videos just like this, as one does, and you put them on YouTube, and then one, I think, has something like almost 2.5 million views now, so that's been really, a lovely surprise. So that's La Bouche Manouche. I also sing in the London Vocal Project, which is a choir that's run by Pete Churchill, an amazing composer and choral director and pianist and singer, and everybody is a professional vocalist and or professional instrumentalist. So it's a great bunch of people, and the music is incredible. And so I have a lot of joy singing with them. I also have a new project called Duets with another jazz vocalist, the fantastic Anita Wardell. One of the best jazz vocalists, really, that I know, and I know lots of great vocalists. She is based in Australia now, but works a lot in London as well. She was based here for very many years. She is also a huge vocalese fan, and, she loves bebop, as do I. So we premiered that project in January at the Pizza Express Jazz Club in London. And, we're hoping to do very many more gigs with that. It was really well received, and we had an incredible time with putting that together. We have another gig planned in July, but...
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's very frustrating. So tell us, when the coronavirus crisis exploded, what were you doing?
We are in partial lockdown at the moment in the UK. I suppose the government really started taking it seriously a few weeks ago. But I think definitely there's stricter measures to come. It was really, the whole situation was quite crazy because I was actually, last month, I went to Italy to ski, to the north of Italy to ski. And after a week that I had been there, I was meant to leave, but I became really, really ill and had the worst flu that I've ever had in my life. Really could not get out of bed for 6 days, and we had to call the doctor. But the coronavirus was still very much contained in China then, so I thought it was coincidental, and obviously I was reading and following the news and knew that it was happening. But nothing had happened in Italy yet, and definitely not northern Italy. So, gradually I started getting better, and as I got better, when the cases in Italy obviously started to appear. And I was in one of the regions called Valle d'Aosta, which is right next to Lombardy and Piedmont. And obviously the week that I had gone with my sister and my partner was half term, so it was very, very busy, which I think is when everything when the virus really took hold in northern Italy, because there were just so many people, everybody was on holiday. But anyway, so I got better, and I actually was in Italy when the first major lockdown happened, and I left the next day. Milan was a ghost town because I traveled through Milan to go to the airport. And then, came back to the UK, but things were still, life is normal here. Everything was just, going on. And I still went to university, and I was teaching, and I was doing gigs. And then, little by little, it got worse and worse. And the government didn't really step in till 2 weeks ago. So it was a lot of sort of personal responsibility. People were, the universities were wanting to go online even before the government decreed it, and shops were closing, and people were already starting to work from home. And now is when I think things could potentially get a lot worse in the UK before they get better. I think this is when the peak should be happening in Italy, and it is. The death toll keeps rising every day. It stalled, I think, 2 or 3 days ago. And now it rose again, and yesterday I think had the highest death toll, this being the 27th of February. I don't know when this is going to air. So now I think possibly I heard that Boris Johnson might speak soon, and I think they're probably going to call for stricter measures because it's not really business as usual here, and things have shut down, but nowhere near the extent that they perhaps need to, if they are going to mirror what Italy has done and what China did to try to contain this virus.
And if, as you say, things will get worse before they get better, what are your plans for this time during the lockdown? I'm trying to stay active, and of course, what are your plans for the future?
Plans for the lockdown, the quarantine. Lots, actually. I'm quite lucky, as in I always have so much to do. I never feel like I have enough time. So this has, in the tragedy of it all, the silver lining has been that it's actually allowed me to really, kind of stop and have time to do the things that I really, I always want to do and never seem to have time for. I think that's a common theme amongst a lot of musicians that I speak to anyway. So I'm still teaching, so I managed to move my university teaching and my private teaching online with Zoom, so that's been great. And I'm also still leading my choir. I lead a choir as well with Zoom, and that's really fun. Obviously, the latency issue makes it quite difficult sometimes, but you just have to get creative and find your way around that. And I'm going to have the second session this Wednesday. So that hope, that's kind of continuing, not quite to the same level that I was doing it before, but I'd say at least 50% it's still continuing. And then lots of other projects, like even just, time to practice. I'm practicing, and I'm practicing the piano as well, and demoing a lot of songs that I've had in my head and just haven't even had time to demo. And I've been sort of in the middle of writing two things. The first thing is a jazz singing podcast that I was going to record in collaboration with Morley College. That's an adult college here in London, and they have a really lovely music department, a really vibrant jazz department that kind of keeps getting bigger, and they have an incredible recording studio, and they have this radio called Morley Radio. So I was kind of doing it in collaboration with them. So I'm going to still try to get that together and just do it remote. So that's a jazz singing podcast. And then I am putting together an online course for jazz singing, and I've just never really, I've sort of, drafted it and written, how the sessions will look, but hopefully in this period I'll have time to really get stuck in, and then the rest is just sort of trying to do lots of music, and I'm part of a group called Italian Girls in London. A very good friend of mine is the moderator, and she asked me if I wanted to keep the morale high and wanted to sort of do Facebook Lives to the page, to these girls. So I'm doing that twice a week, which has been really, really fun. Also, non-music related things. I'm really trying to do more of those. I'm quite an obsessive musician, so, most of my waking hours are either doing music or thinking about music or talking about music. So I thought, let's use this time to, not be so obsessive. So I read a lot. I travel, London is so big that, sometimes the travel can be quite substantial to one of my universities. It's a 2-hour commute there and a 2-hour commute back. So I do get to read, but it's just been really nice to just kind of, read books that I've been wanting to read for ages and just have the time to just literally, read 3 chapters. I'm getting back into my bike. I used to be a very keen cyclist, and then I got really busy, and so that kind of had to go. But now I'm rediscovering my bike in London and all the incredible places that London has. It's got it's got loads of green spaces, and, we've been managing to do that with my partner and keeping safety distances from everyone, although I'm not sure if that's going to continue. I've spoken to some of my family members in Italy, and obviously things are a lot stricter there, and you can barely go out now at all. You definitely can't cycle, and you shouldn't even go out into, 2 people at once, unless I think obviously you're with children. So I'm not sure how long that's going to last, but for now I get to enjoy that, and it's also been incredibly sunny days in London, weirdly. So that's been a bonus as well. Plans for the future, lots. As always, we are have just started writing the 4th album with ISK. So that's probably going to be my main focus for the future. I'd love to sort of do a release perhaps next September. I'm not going to stress out about it too much. The album's going to be ready when it's going to be ready. But yeah, exciting. It's every time I think you do an album and every time you do more writing, it always feels like you're getting closer to that golden egg of what you imagine in your head that your music really should sound like. So I'm really excited about that, and hopefully when all this is finished, or at least contained, then obviously the performance, the gigs can happen again, because obviously my future plans are to be performing as much as possible, although now that just seems an impossibility, at least for, the next 2-3 months.
Right. At the moment, it sounds like an impossible dream for us all. But these weird days, they're gonna be over sooner or later. And meanwhile, there is music. So tell us more about this track we're gonna listen.
The song I have decided to share with you is a song called Zion. It's from our second album called 2. It was sort of the single of that album, and there's a lovely music video that goes with it, or at least I think it's a lovely music video, but lots of other people have said that they like it too, so that's always a bonus. You can check it out on YouTube. You can find it there. You can find it, I think, on our Facebook page, and I think there's clips on it on Instagram. So if you are interested, please go check it out. It was filmed in East London by a wonderful director called Diana Oliferova, who is a good friend of mine. And it's basically me dancing around on an East London rooftop. I think it was shot in December, so it was freezing, although I was smiling and trying to look like it wasn't the coldest day of the year. Zion was quite an important song for me. I remember Chris, the drummer, sent over sort of a little sample of the music, and I composed the hook, the chorus almost immediately. I just heard it, and it was probably one of the first songs that we composed of the second album. So I always have that moment when I'm writing music, or especially for working towards an album, where I will write something and I'm like, yeah, this is the second album, or this is the third album. So I think Zion was it. That was the song where I had a real sense of, okay, this is what the second album is going to sound like and be about. And it's still possibly one of my favorite ISK songs to sing as well. I guess it's the composition that's perhaps closest to a pop tune, as in it doesn't really have an out and out improvised section. But I think it very much retains our sound. It's very faithful to what we do. And it really sounds like ISK. And it's, I wasn't really going through a breakup, but it was sort of towards the end of one of my relationships. And so the song is kind of about that, because we, still very much cared for each other, but the relationship had come to the end. So it's that kind of really difficult situation where you still obviously love someone, but you're perhaps not in love with them, or anyway, it's not working. So it's really about that. You're my Zion. You're my Zion. And thinking about not having this person in your life, and it wasn't a positive thought. A lot of my lyrics, I guess, do deal with relationship matters, mostly of the romantic type, although I guess I'm quite a melancholic soul, so a lot of critics have picked up on that and have, been very accurate in sort of describing my my lyrical world as, very romantic, but not negative, but I suppose quite sad, sort of, we tried our best, and yet it didn't work out. And I'm going to be okay with that in the future, but I'm not okay with that now. Kind of like that. If you like what you hear, please do check us out on, the usual social media channels, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We are, SoundCloud as well. We, just sort of finished a UK tour, so there's lots of live clips, and it's been, amazing. I guess when you record an album, what you really want to do is kind of go out there and play it. So it's been amazing to be able to do that and to really develop as a band, and especially with all the electronic elements. So, yeah, I hope you, you enjoy what you hear next.
Great. Well, Irene, thank you very much for your participation, for sharing your stories with us. Really, thanks a lot. And now, ladies and gents, Zion. QuaranJazz. Listen while you're home. QuaranJazz, a podcast by Geisa Fernandes.